Good morning, good day, and good evening. Welcome back to the show. Today I have a really interesting guest who I don't understand why he does what he does. But I guess that's why he's here today. Welcome to the show, Immolo. Why don't you just give a brief introduction and explain what you do, and then we can get into the details of it.
Hi, thanks for having me on. So I'm Immolo, and I like to install Gentoo on random devices. Probably the most craziest one I'm known for is a PlayStation 2, mainly just to see if it's possible to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, some of the other crazy ones I've done is a Nintendo Wii,
Right.
Xbox 360. What else I forgot? The Pentium 3 builds, quite a famous one as well. I had a 38 day build of Rust going on that one,
Mm-hmm.
which which was quite interesting.
Yup. 38 days.
38 days,
Jeez.
many people. That's not the worst compile though. The worst one was on the PlayStation 2, which I think you came on stream
Yeah,
for, which
that was
was
that was back when I was doing my LFS stream.
oh
Yeah,
yeah.
that's when I found your channel. I don't understand. I simply don't understand why. I think that's the most important question. Besides just, you can check if it works by just searching on the internet. Like that's an easy enough thing to do. But why? Why are you doing this?
The challenge really. So obviously it started off that I found a project that someone made a 5.4 Linux kernel
Mm,
over I think it's FRNO7 PS2. If you search for that, you'll find the GitHub page. And I thought, I wonder if I can get Gentoo to run on that. Obviously, I started with that just to learn because obviously
mm,
I just like learning new things, and that kind of spiraled into fixing some bugs on Gentoo. So MIPS works better, and but the worst part when you joined was I needed to get a live CD out, so I was about to stay away for work for a couple of weeks.
mm.
Couldn't get a cross compiler working, so I thought, screw it, let's just compile on the console. Streamed it, and then managed to get a record number of views watching one line move I think about every hour.
Yup.
For people that don't know, though, DHCP-D normally compiles in 5 seconds. Took
Mm.
10 hours on a PlayStation 2.
Wait, so are you compiling like everything when you're doing Gen 2? You're not using any binaries, or are there some binaries involved there? Because I know there are binaries in the Gen 2 repos.
Yeah, on my main system, obviously, I use binaries. I'm
Sure,
not
sure, sure.
crazy all the time, but on the PlayStation 2, I usually use something like QEMU.
Mm.
You can emulate obviously different architectures on that to do the cross compiling or cross dev, and then just transfer the files over.
Yep. Oh, that makes
But for
sense.
this one time, I just couldn't get it to work, so I just SSH'd in and did it. On the
Mhm.
plus side, though, we got to see how stable the kernel was, and it's a pretty damn stable kernel, I've got to admit, on that sort of hardware, because we've only got 22 megabytes of RAM available,
Yep. Um,
and the root device is only USB 1.1, so that's 11 megabits per second. You can imagine how fast that swap was going.
oh, that sounds rough as hell. How many parts was the PS2 one? What is it?
It's about 26. Most of them, though, is just me trying to learn how to get init RAM FS to work because I've never done it before.
Yep.
Um, if you find the one where I actually get it, which I think is around 24, 25, you can
Mhm.
hear me pop off quite a lot. Because but say most of it is just me trying something and
Mhm.
then it not working. It was
Yep.
absolutely awful. But the actual compiling on the PS2, that was easy. Like it's like when you got to learn something new, it's always hard, isn't it?
Mm. I think a lot of people actually forgot there was actually like an official like Linux distribution for the PS2. So like installing Linux on a PS2 isn't actually like obviously compiling everything is ridiculous and takes an insane amount of time, but the idea of having Linux on a PS2 isn't in and of itself that insane.
Yeah, no, you are right. I mean, back in the day, around I think it was around about 2004, there was a sort of semi-official Gentoo project for the official PS2 Linux pack that
Mhm,
was out. One of the devs, I think it was Kuma. I might be pronouncing his name wrong. He actually had one built, ready to go on there.
mhm, mhm,
And actually, it was his project that got me down this weird hobby of installing Gentoo on random things. Because
mhm.
obviously, even when I was a young child at eight, actually I suppose I was 18, I was installing on weird things back then.
Oh, so there's a history to this. It's not
Oh,
just.
there's definitely history. I mean, yeah, I mean that the PS2 is my famous one, but there's a lot more worse than that out there, really.
Mhm.
I mean, I don't know if you've seen the project of me getting modded in Gentoo running on a 2.6 kernel, just for the fun.
I haven't seen it, but I see it's in your your VODs on YouTube. Um,
Yeah. That one's more entertaining, I think. That's my personal challenge build. That was
uh-huh.
it's obviously I've had to learn how to patch kernel headers and stuff like that to get
Mhm.
things to work. That one was quite exciting.
So, how long have you sort of been involved in Linux? Like, have you, are you one of those people who, when they first started using a computer, it was with Linux, or was there at some point you were actually sane?
I don't think I was ever sane, but I think I got my first computer around '97,
Mhm.
and I switched to Linux in 2001,
Oh,
and basically
wow.
been using it ever since then.
Mhm.
First distribution being Red Hat 9, I believe. Back when we had dial up, took me, I think it was a week, no, 9 days, sorry, to download the CDs to get that installed. Only to find out that my ISP didn't work in Linux, which was absolutely brilliant.
Oh, right. That was a thing at one point, wasn't it?
Yep, yeah, it was terrible. That's when I learned all about Win modems.
Mhm.
But yeah, but that wasn't my first ever time in Linux though. That was the more interesting story. I remember once I bought a PC gaming magazine,
Uh-huh.
and I had a second free disc in it, and obviously I think I was about 16 at the time, something like that, maybe a little bit younger, naive child still. Left the CD in, wondering why it wasn't working in Windows.
Mhm.
Rebooted the computer. When I
Oh.
rebooted, obviously it booted straight in, and I was like, "Oh, what's this?" Inquisitive child that I am, I decided to install it on the
Ah.
family PC that cost a few £1,000s at the time. My my father wasn't very best impressed with me. But
I,
that was probably the thing that got me down a path of an IT career,
yeah,
because
yeah.
I obviously learned how to fix computers from that. But
Mhm.
it does always make me laugh that everyone says Linux was hard to install back there, and there's me just pressing some random buttons, ending up with a terminal to mess around in.
I, th- I think the argument is from a lot of people who didn't use it back then. Like recently did a video. It hasn't gone up yet, but a video about something involved in Red Hat 5.1, and the
Hmm.
installer is basically just a regular curses installer. Like, there's nothing difficult about it. You just press next, and it just works. Like, sure, maybe
Yeah,
like you have issues post install, maybe
yeah,
hardware
yeah.
support, things like that. But the actual install process was no more difficult than just installing Ubuntu now.
No, that is definitely true. If you've seen the N Commander one with Debian 2, I'm sorry,
Uh,
Debian 2.
I don't know what you're on about.
Obviously you've heard the famous quote about Linus saying about he didn't like Debian because it was so hard to install.
Right.
So that's why he uses Red Hat.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I never understood this quote until I watched the N Commander video of him. He is a Debian and Ubuntu maintainer,
Mm-hmm.
and he installed it, one of the original ones, and even he couldn't do it. And I was like,
Right.
wow, if this guy can't install an old Debian install, no wonder Linus couldn't do it. He's not a desktop person to
Mm-hmm.
do that sort of thing. It was a real eye opener. It's definitely a good watch. It's about an hour long, but you'll watch the whole thing through.
I know those. It actually does make sense that it was hard to install because that's part of the reason why, like, Ubuntu hit the scene. Ubuntu is supposed to take Debian and just make it, more user friendly, and it makes sense that there was issues on the installation side as well. I've looked at the installer for the original Ubuntu, Warty Warthog, but I hadn't looked
Hmm.
at Debian yet, so maybe I'll have to go
Oh,
and see what that's like. And
Yeah, definitely take a look at that.
I don't think I'm going to get it installed, but I want to at least see what it's like.
Yeah, trust me, I wouldn't get it installed. So you wouldn't feel any bad about yourself if you can't do it. It looks hard. But yeah, I mean, Linux to install has been easy. I mean, I remember in 2001, I just knew basic partition stuff, and I could get it installed. So I did, what did I use? Red Hat, Mandrake, OpenSUSE. It was all easy. It was, just whatever the graphical installer was. So it was only things like Gentoo that was a little bit hard because you had to follow a wiki page to install it.
Yeah, but not everything is Gentoo. Not everything is
no.
Most things are like, I think those distros sort of stand out as these like weird distros that, you can make them like. Does Gentoo have any sort of automated installer? Because Arch has one now.
Yeah, I mean, we used to have one back in the day, a graphical installer, and obviously there's the scripts, but they make it harder for the user because obviously you've done the install, the handbooks also teaches you how to manage the system as you're doing it.
The handbook is really good, like really well written.
Isn't it? Absolutely amazing how much detail goes into it. But it's like some bits are a little bit hard. Like, I don't know how you found the use flag part. It's a little bit confusing, but once you get further into you're managing your Gentoo system, you're like, oh, so that's what they was explaining to me, and it's the only way you can really do that. I think you can't make it simpler without not giving you the skills to help yourself later on.
I think the only issue I have with the Gentoo handbook is there are some parts where it's a little bit too verbose. There was some bits that I found in here where they were just explaining things that should be pretty obvious if you're approaching something like Gentoo. I don't know what part it was specifically. I can't remember what page it was, but I remember reading it and it was like 3 paragraphs about this very basic thing. Maybe it was in about the installation, something like that. I don't know. Either way, sorry?
So I was going to say, we have got other parts where we go the other way. Like we don't even mention you can install, use a USB to write the image to. It's just CD. So, but obviously, most of us that use Gentoo don't go through the handbook. I mean, I can't remember the last time I fired it up. To be fair, but, it's burnt into my memory at this point. So, really, we all love it when people give back information, like feedback, so we can improve it. So if anyone does find it, feel free to go on onto the forums or anything like that, Reddit, and just say what you found. We've had lots of changes done. Oh, something else.
I do remember when I got to that use flag section, I think my chat was helping me with a lot of stuff with that one, sort of explaining what the best flags were. Like, not like, a giant list of them, but just basic stuff that wasn't included at the time. I don't remember what the flags were. But
how did you find having a backseat installer?
Sorry?
How did you find having a backseat installer? The thing about us is we love to tell people what we like without forgetting what the person actually wants. Obviously, that's the thing with Gentoo, and you got the power to make your system. And occasionally we do forget that what we like isn't what other people like.
I was just sort of going through it just to see, because, I'd heard that Gentoo was difficult to install. Like, most people will hear that Arch is difficult to install, but they'd never actually done it. So I wanted to see what that experience was like. And, if it wasn't so well documented, I can understand why it would be difficult. But as it stands, if you just go through what it says, you're pretty much going to be good. Maybe there's things that aren't being done in the most optimal way. But as for getting a working system, the handbook does everything that it needs to be doing, basically. As long as you, actually read what it says. There were some parts where I just assumed I knew what I was doing and didn't read, and then people were like, you're an idiot. But besides those points, when I actually paid attention, I do think that if you haven't installed Linux before, it can be very, very overwhelming.
For sure.
But if you have an understanding of, the internals of a Linux system, you've messed around. It doesn't have to be like you've, done LFS or something like that, but you've used Ubuntu, you've delved around your system, you understand how things sort of piece together, you'll be fine. Just
Yeah, no, definitely. You're definitely right there. You say, as long as you understand the basics, partitioning, what your CPU is,
yeah,
how much RAM you've got, you'll be fine. And obviously, you know to read it twice. I
and
mean, obviously, that's
also
most of my mistakes.
you just feel comfortable using a command line as well.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if you're using Gentoo, you're in a command line. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't think there's a day where the terminal's not open.
Well, there are those Gentoo-based distros that make things a bit more graphical that you could kind of avoid things at least initially. So you could at least get an installed system before you worry about it. But then, yeah, I guess after that you're probably going to be in a bit more
Yeah, you're
trouble
gonna
if
be
you try
in a
to do
lot more
so.
trouble. That's the one. Yeah, because they're saying the handbooks to teach you how to use it. So
Mm.
if you use an install script, you've got a system working, and then you're, well, what do I do now? Situation.
Yeah, that was one of the concerns that people had when Arch added the Arch install, because that's just an automated. It was very buggy when it first added. Oh god, it was so buggy when they first added it.
I
The
think I was still on Arch at the time, actually. So I
when
think because I did actually use Arch for a few years as well. So
oh, okay. We'll get into that in just a bit, but I just want to rant
yeah,
about this install script for a moment.
yeah, go on, go on.
So, the dev actually was in my comments section and was like, "Okay, yeah, we probably shouldn't have shipped this." When they first added it, if you entered, so there'd be like yes or no questions, things like that. If you entered an invalid option, the script would crash.
Oh,
So
nice.
no matter how far you were into the installation process, if you entered something wrong, it would crash. You have to redo everything. And I had people in
Oh
my comments were
no.
like, "No, you should just enter stuff properly. It's your fault you enter stuff wrong." Like, no, it shouldn't crash. It should just be like, "Hey, you're stupid. Enter the right thing." And there's a bunch of other random things like that. There were mistakes all over the place. But last time I tried Arch install, it was good. I hear there's issues if you try to do things like secure boot, but like just a regular installed system, you should be mostly fine.
Yeah, I have never used it, but I have heard lots of good things about it. To be
Mhm.
fair, so
Yeah,
it
nowadays
should
it
be.
is good. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't think I've heard anyone actually have a problem with it. So it looks
Mhm.
like they fixed it.
So, what has your Linux journey actually been like? So you started on, you said Red Hat
Uh, yeah,
9.
Red Hat 9,
Mm-hmm.
then Mandrake, I believe 8.
Mm-hmm.
God, you're going back a few years. I've done way too much in those years to remember. What did I use after that? I think I then switched to Gentoo, but that
Oh,
was an
okay.
interesting one because I had a Pentium 3 back in 2002. I was
Uh-huh.
still in college at the time, so obviously
Right.
trying to afford a new computer at that time. So that's why I kind of switched, because obviously back on the x86 days, it gave you a bit of a speed boost. I think I then, what did I do? Then I think I went to Ubuntu,
Okay.
and then back to Gentoo, just sort of mixed between the two until I finally got a new laptop, which was one of the original AMD 64 machines.
Uh-huh.
Um, and then I think I just used Ubuntu on it just to play with wobbly windows and stuff like that.
Oh, so it would have been during the Compos time then.
Yeah, definitely around that sort of time. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that was fun. Yeah, I kind of switch between most distros, sort of like between Ubuntu and Gentoo, depending on what's going on in my life.
That is a weird, a weird set of choices. Like, just
Yeah,
yeah. Like you, you look at it nowadays. A lot of people seem to be very. You either have people who are distro hopping everywhere, or you have a lot of people who are just very specific about using, just the one thing. They're an Arch user, they're an Ubuntu user, they're a Gentoo user. Here you are, it's like, yeah, I swap back and forth between Gentoo and Ubuntu.
just use what's best for the best tool for the job, don't you? It's not,
That's fair. Like,
yeah, it's a
it,
tool, not a cult, isn't it?
exactly, yeah. I think a lot of people are a bit. They kind
Yeah.
of tie their personality a bit too much to Linux and the distro they use. Um, and rather than just looking at it like, okay, I have a developer machine. it probably doesn't make sense to install Gentoo on a machine that I need for work. Okay, let's use something like, Ubuntu, Pop! OS, things like that. But if it's if it's a system that you're like, it's your messing around system, you're just like hacking on things, yet maybe something like Gentoo does make sense there, because if it breaks for a couple of days, it doesn't really matter that much.
I'd say obviously, but back then things in Linux weren't as stable as they are now.
Yeah.
So things would break even on stable. Nowadays, though, I just run Gentoo full time on everything, including the web server. It doesn't go down. It's pretty stable. I mean, there's the meme in it that it's as stable as Debian. And so as long as you're not jumping into the testing branch, you're going to be fine on Gentoo if you want to learn. But I suppose nowadays I'm a little bit more insane than I was back as a child. So.
Yeah, you kind of have to be a little bit insane if you're gonna set up a channel where you're just installing Gentoo on things.
Yeah, well, I actually, someone on Reddit asked me to, because I was installing Gentoo on a Pentium 3 just to see what it was going to be like.
Right.
And obviously back in the day, it used to take, I think it was 3 days to install a full desktop with web browser and Open Office at the time it was.
Yeah.
That was a Pentium 4, 400 megahertz, 128 megabytes of RAM. Someone gave me a Pentium 3, which was 600 megabytes for the same amount of RAM. It took me a month to rebuild the system alone. So that's like GCC.
Yeah.
And I used Muscle for the libc, so that saves some time. But oh my god, it is slow. So yes, we've gone 3 days to 28 days just because of the memory usage.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I just left that running on Twitch for a few days. People used to just come in, watch it, see how far it got. Don't do it. Just use a faster machine if you're going to do it. It's fine to run it on the system, but just don't get the slow machine to build it, please. Don't be like me.
So, for reference on a modern machine, how long would it take you to get Gentoo set up?
What, just to boot into a bootable experience, or to a full desktop?
Let's say you have a full desktop.
Full desktop, easily under a day. I'd say 6 hours if a relatively fast machine. But I'd say that depends if you've used Gentoo.
Right.
If you're doing it under 3 days as a new user, you've done a good job. Like, no matter what the specs are.
That's still a lot of time. When
I know it's a lot of time. But you got to remember, you're learning a lot of new things while you move. So I'm probably giving it a disservice by saying it that way. But you could do it in 6 hours. I mean, I've got a laptop building right now that's been running for a couple of hours, and that'll be finished soon. Probably by the time this stream finishes.
Any particular reason, or just you want to install it on the laptop?
It's my work laptop, so I just wanted to set up a new test machine with Clang and Muscle on it just for fun.
So
I might get ZFS running. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
No, sorry, it's all good. There's a delay, so I'm gonna try not to cut you off, but I probably will. So at this stage, you run Gentoo on everything.
Yep.
Huh. Okay, that makes sense. Like, there's a couple of people in my comment section who are like, I am Gentoo or die. So I'm not like, actually one of them I've noticed in your comment section a couple of times. Terry Dactylus or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
Who on my channel is usually there to troll me about video game things. It's usually a giant paragraph. Being like, video games bad, blah 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 blah, all this nonsense, and why I should use Gentoo.
Well, he's right on the Gentoo part, but
sure. So,
but yeah, I've lost my train of thought on that one. That just made me laugh. Sorry.
That's good. What I was gonna say is, for someone who's not using Gentoo, shill to them why they should use it instead. What sells Gentoo as an experience for you?
So it's the best thing about Gentoo is the community. We all help each other. So if you've got a project you want to do, like installing Gentoo on a PS2, the whole community will help you live that dream, no matter how stupid it is. If you want to learn and you want to help yourself,
Hmm.
we'll give you the tools for the little bits you're stuck on, which isn't something that many other distros do, I don't think. Um,
No, I can
I
definitely see
don't,
that. I
yeah,
can't say I've. Yeah, I can't say that would happen on something like Arch for sure. Um, like usually Arch is just like we band together to complain about someone breaking something in the repos. But apart from that, yeah, I that's definitely a different sort of community.
yeah. So we're all there together. We was all a noob once,
Mhm.
so we're all there to hold your hand with you. All we expect from you is to search first, and then we'll help you when you can't understand what you found.
Right. Yeah, I think that's an issue a lot of people have where I noticed this with pretty much any distro, but it's obviously more more extreme on the more, user friendly distros where it's something really simple and it's very obvious they did absolutely zero research. Like, it's one thing if you don't understand something, like, that's totally fine. But
Yeah,
when you've done zero research, you can type that, like, whatever their question is, directly into a search engine and the answer shows up right away. Like, I.
I'll get you. I'll get you on that. What I've started doing on that
Mhm.
is, if I'm helping a user, is
Mhm.
I show them the answer and also show them the keywords I've used,
Yeah, yeah,
because
yeah.
a lot of us take for granted how easy it is to use something like Google, DuckDuckGo.
Mhm.
We know the Google foo. A lot of
Sure.
people just don't know those skills. So if you teach them that, you know,
No,
give a man a fish kind of this thing, isn't it? You know.
I don't think it's a good idea to get angry with those people, but I can understand it. Like, I
Yeah, I
get
can.
it. Yeah.
I can't say I've never got frustrated at a user for doing
Mhm.
it, but it sometimes you just got to put yourself back in that mind when you were the day one.
Yeah, yeah. No, that makes sense. Like, you'll definitely see this in. This is sort of why the Arch community has sort of like this, I guess, aura of being very toxic because it doesn't have that like helpful side that Gentoo has in that way, but it is very quick to jump on someone who very clearly didn't do any research. Um, I
I wonder if it's the straw that broke the camel's back, though. Sometimes, because
Yeah, like,
we
I don't.
we always see the worst one, don't we? But sometimes we forget there was 1,000 before that one.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I don't think you would do that on like a individual level. Like, if you're speaking to someone personally and they didn't understand something whatsoever, they didn't even bother to do any research, you wouldn't jump on them in that same way. But when it's like a faceless name on an IRC, a faceless name on a forum, like, it's a lot easier to just ignore the fact that, yeah, that person is just a person like you who at one point you had never used this system before and you didn't really know where the documentation was, like, full stop. Like, you didn't know that things like I guess the Gentoo handbook's a bad example. Like, you're using Arch, you installed it with like an install script or something. You've never
Mm,
been to the Arch wiki before, for example.
yeah,
Like,
I say if you're not coming from Debian,
mhm,
I don't know if you ever used it. Trying to find information on there is just finding a random blog post from 2017 and hoping
right.
it still works. So I think like anyone who's from that sort of era kind of understands that it can be a frustrating experience.
I've
But
not.
obviously, if you've
I'm sorry, go on.
no, you're not,
No.
yeah, I was gonna say, but if you've used Arch, the best thing about Arch Linux is a centralized documentation. I mean,
Yeah.
every distro needs to aim to be as good as that, I believe.
What I was going to say is I've
So,
not been to the Debian Wiki before. I have no idea what
oh,
it's like. We're
it's
going to do
awful.
so right now.
I mean,
Software, let's pick something.
I like Debian as well. I'm not doing it to be mean, but
Sure.
it needs a little bit of improvement. I think personally.
Okay, here we go. Firefox. Uh, okay. It looks functional, at least. It's sort of just a text dump.
Yeah,
Um,
that's kind of it. It doesn't kind of help you. I mean, you'll find the better information just popping what you got as a problem into a search engine and just
mm-hmm,
finding some random post. But that's something that Linux users can improve themselves. So if you ever find an issue
mm-hmm,
and you need to fix it, just go onto the wiki for whatever distro you use and fix it on there for the next
mm-hmm.
person, so they don't get the same issue. If we all did that once a month, how much better would Linux be? That's the philosophy I always follow, anyway.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. The only issue is when you have when you have wikis that are very insular in who is allowed to commit to them, like you need some reputation in their community, you need to be involved in discussions, things like that, and having that barrier to entry is a good thing to make sure the quality of the content is good, but can be a barrier to having new people join in that space and contribute things that may otherwise be left out on by the people already there.
Do any distros actually have that? I don't think I've ever come across one.
I don't think it's really a massive issue with the. I haven't looked at all of the wikis, so I can't say. But there are wikis.
Yeah, no, so I don't think I've ever seen a distro do it. So I just
there
trying
are
to find
there are
one that
wikis
did.
outside of the distro space, so I was just assuming there are
Right, okay.
probably wikis in the distro space that are like that. If there's not, then that's great. But I know
Yeah, I'm gonna say we.
Sorry, I know there are wikis out there that are definitely like that. So it would just make sense.
I suppose like the smaller sort of communities I can understand, just probably
Mm.
just to keep away spam and stuff like that. But I don't think I've seen a big one. I'll say for Gentoo, I know we'd rather you put in a bad edit with some good information in it, and then the people that know how to word it properly will go in and fix it
No, that makes
afterwards.
sense.
Because all we need is the information, and obviously there's also talk pages on most wikis that if you know how to fix it but don't know how to write it, just write it in there and someone else will do it for you.
Right. Because it can seem, well, especially if English is like a second language for you, it
Yeah,
can
definitely.
seem a bit intimidating getting involved in that space.
I can understand that. Although most people that speak another language probably speak better English than I do, which is quite worrying.
Yeah, I know the feeling. So
Yeah,
look,
that's what it is.
native English speakers are the worst people at English. We
Yeah,
have,
you're not wrong.
we have this native understanding, but if you ask us to explain grammar, good
What's
luck
that?
with that one.
I can put a comma and a full stop in sometimes, but that's about it.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe
It's crazy, isn't it? It is crazy.
Maybe I'll
I
use
think I've had once before.
sorry?
So I've had people. I was going to say I've had people there going, "Sorry for my bad English," and I'm like, "You speak better than I do." So I
Yeah.
don't know what you're apologising to me for. Can you teach me?
Yeah, I always love that. I'll get these comments from time to time. There'll be like these really well articulated. I have to like check what some of the words mean in the dictionary. I'm like, what? Oh, sure that. And they're like, oh, sorry, English my second language. Like, no, are you sure? Like, maybe they have issues speaking it, but you certainly don't have issues writing it.
No. So you seem to understand it very well. But I'd say it's just a problem I don't think native speakers will ever understand because we can't even learn our own language, let alone another person's.
Yeah. Which always makes me laugh whenever like people who are native English speakers go to another country to like a common way to get into another country is to go there as an English teacher.
Yeah.
But like and the ones who do it when they don't have like a linguistics degree, I have no idea how they manage to make that work.
Apparently you get it with people that speak Chinese and Japanese over here. I've heard stories of people doing that. Like no thing on it, but just because they know the language, they can teach it.
I'm sure you can teach it better than like, having no knowledge whatsoever, but I don't know how well that would really go, to be honest.
No, I can't say how well it'll work. I mean, my teacher tried teaching me French for about 13 years, and I still can only say hello. But
Yeah, did I have any? I think in my primary school we did some German. I don't remember much of it. I think the only thing that I retained was counting 1 to 10, and that's pretty much it. And maybe
more than I don't know.
good morning as well, because that's a simple one. But I don't even think I learnt that in the class. I think I just learnt that from watching movies.
You know what? You're probably right. I think I learned most of my French from that. But all from French food or something.
So back to the Linux side. So you were saying before that you'd already been messing around with doing Gentoo and things like a Pentium 3.
Yep.
So besides that, were you messing around with Gentoo on other devices at the time? And then
Yeah, so like, I've done many before in the
Mhm.
past, like little pocket PCs. Like I had a
Oh,
little 40 megahertz machine with like 16 megabytes of RAM. But that was back when I didn't really understand Linux as much as I thought I did. Know the stage when you think you know it all, but know nothing.
yeah, yeah.
Um, and like I had like a little Spark laptop as well, which
Mhm.
was quite nice. But it's only been recently that I've actually understood what I was doing to be able to do it. So I started off with the Pentium 3, then
Mhm.
moved on to the Xbox 360, which is
Mm.
awful. Don't do that with Linux,
Oh,
especially Gen 2.
what's wrong
It's
about the
got
Xbox?
so there's a bug on all Xbox 360s that if all the processors hit a certain load, it hard locks the console. And apparently it's always been there, and every game has worked around it. And the only reason
Oh,
we know about it is because we got Linux running on it in the first place and hit it constantly. It's never been solved since they've got it on there, and no one ever thinks they will. But yeah, you'll randomly be using it, and it will just crash. But you can't
I'm
do anything.
assuming that happened during the streams.
Many, 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 many times.
Right.
Awful.
How do you avoid that?
You can't. You physically can't. I've tried limiting it to one core. It hits a random load in a
Mhm.
random place, and that's it. Like no one knows
Huh.
the secret source to stop it. If anyone does, please upload the fix. Do me a favour.
That's so dumb. So, did you end up getting that one done, or were you just like,
Uh, I've
nope?
I've got it working on there. It's not usable, so I've not
Okay.
released it. It's yeah, it was just more of a passion project for fun. The better one I did was the Nintendo Wii,
Mhm.
which I actually managed to get a full installer, like a stage 3 that you just rip to an SD card, and if you've put what's the loader, Me Boot onto your Wii, you
Mhm.
just plugged in the SD card of it and it'll instantly boot into Gen 2 for you,
Mhm.
which was pretty good. And then you could just use it as you know, install it from there to how
Mhm.
you wanted it to be, which was quite fun doing that. Um,
And
what was
then
the one
the
after that?
there's what do we have? You have the Power PC, Power Mac, the Power Mac G5.
Yeah, the G5. I was speaking to a Gentoo dev
Mhm.
about bugs, and he was telling me about how bad Big Edian Power PC 64 was,
Mhm.
and then the next thing I'm there on eBay trying to find a system to buy because I just find stuff like that fun.
Mm.
Got
With
it for a really
the
good price though.
the PS2 and the 360, did you just happen to have those just already still laying around, or?
Xbox 360 I had from a childhood. I had a PS2 somewhere, but I
Mhm.
can't find it, so I just
Oh,
bought another one.
okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Um, yeah, so Pentium 3 I got free from work one day because it was cheaper to give it to me than put it in e-waste.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, it's not
It's
exactly
crazy, isn't it?
it's not
But the
exactly
worst part
productive for
was
much
they
else.
rung, yeah, so they rung me up one day and they were like, "Oh, we got this PC. It's really old. You'd like that, wouldn't you?" Yeah, well known.
Hey,
Oh,
at least it works out for you then.
oh yeah, sometimes it does. So what else have I got? I've got an original Xbox as well that I need to
Mhm.
install it on one day. That'd be a problem. But again, that's just a Pentium 3 and a funky box, isn't it? Really.
Oh, you're right. The original Xbox was basically just a PC, wasn't it?
Yeah, yeah, pretty much just a stripped down version of Windows 2000, I believe.
Mm. Right. No, of course it is because that's why all the devs hated the PS2 because it was this dumb architecture that didn't make any sense. Um, yeah. It's like, hey, let's have this emotion engine thing. Like, I'm sorry, what did you just say? Let's not do that.
I think it was more the issue on the PS3 that everyone had
The
the issue
PS3
with,
was a
wasn't
lot
it?
worse, but the PS2, from my understanding, was a mess as well. Who was it? Modern Vintage Gamer did a really good breakdown of the architecture and how it was different from things going on at the time. And when
Yeah.
the alternative to the PS2 is a PC, like it's obviously going to be easier to develop for one of them, but the PS2 just was a DVD player that was very cheap, so it kind of sold really
Yeah.
well. So they had to
Well,
learn
and it
it.
was Yeah, so and it was out a good few years before, so it had
Yeah,
already won the console war before they even got into the market.
yeah. The PS3, even though it was a cheap Blu-ray player, it didn't exactly help it that much.
No, I mean that was the first year I didn't buy Sony as a thing.
I yeah,
But
I've only ever bought PlayStation consoles. Yeah. I've actually never bought anything from Microsoft. I did have an original Xbox that was secondhand gifted to me, and I had a Wii that was gifted to me, but I've never actually bought a Xbox or a Nintendo console with my own money.
that's pretty good going. I mean, obviously my things are a little bit different, so I
Mhm.
look for a system that's hackable so I can put
Yeah.
Linux on it. You know, as everyone does.
Oh yeah.
So
Absolutely, yeah.
obviously, so obviously, when it came to the PS3 at the time, it wasn't hacked, so it was
Mhm.
360 that year for me.
Mhm. Is the
So yeah,
PS3 doable now, or what's the
yeah,
deal
oh yeah.
there?
Now it's fairly easy if you know what you're doing. It's going to be a little hard because I don't think the software's been updated in a few years, so you'll probably be starting from a 2014 base. But if you've been using Linux for a while, you'll easily be able to
Mhm.
sort that out yourself. I mean, I've got some notes lurking around about how I'd think I'd do it without seeing it, but it's just getting my hands on a system. One day I'll find one lurking around in a thrift shop or something can do it.
So one
But
thing I want to ask about is with that Gentoo 2.6.39 kernel, why
yep.
specifically that kernel?
Right. So when I first did the Xbox 360, there was
Uh-huh.
only a working 2.6 kernel that I could find.
Right.
And I couldn't get any other kernel to work. So I thought I'd just use that, which then led me to find out all the changes that happened.
Mm.
And 2.39 is the old.
Oh, oh, is he gone? Hello?
Hello, you back?
Okay, yeah, cool.
There you go. I don't know what happened there.
I
So I
don't
don't know
know.
where I broke off at.
Uh, you're saying 2.6 was there was patches to the kernel,
Oh,
something about
yeah, so I
360?
had to patch on the Xbox 360, but while I was doing that, I found out that 2.6.39 was the oldest one of getting EUV dev to work on the
Mm.
system. So I did it just because it was still a challenge, but not stupidly
Mm.
challenging. Um, because obviously you still have to patch a lot of programs to work with the older programs, but at least you can get your devices working off the
Right.
bat. Um, you probably could go older if you've got more time, but
Mhm.
why would you want to do that? I mean, I only did it for fun.
Well, the question is, why do you want to do 2.6.39 in the first place? But sure, you'll go.
Well, obviously, I did it because of a need for the Xbox originally,
Yeah.
but you know, I spent that much time. I thought "Well, I might as well put some notes on in case they want everyone else wants to do what I've
Hmm.
just done. So it was more of a I know how to do it now. Let's teach other people how to do it if they ever get stuck in a situation I was in. Because I mean, there's old routers out there that only use a 2.6 kernel.
Hmm.
You could follow my guide, get Gentoo running on it, and have a fairly reasonable secure machine. I wouldn't say it was too secure, but.
To be fair, when we say 2.6 kernel, that doesn't exactly mean much because that kernel versioning was around for way too long. From
Yeah, yeah.
2003 to. Oh, the last one, 2.6.39, 2011. Yeah.
That's it. I remember when the first release came out, so yeah, so thanks for making me feel old.
I've done a video on the history of Linux kernel versioning, and the 2.6 series was. I see why 12 volts just doesn't ever want that to ever happen again. Like that was so
Yeah,
dumb.
I get that. I mean, it looks like his vision in big numbers hard, isn't it? I say it's the best reason ever. But
Yeah,
it does make sense. Back in the day, it used to be, it used to mean something like the
sure. Yeah.
2.4s, 2.5s, but not anymore.
No, not for a while. I think I want to say the last time it actually meant anything was probably pre 2.6.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, well, 2.6 was the reason it changed on it, really. I mean, and we needed version 3 so we could have 3.1 as well, 3.11.
Yeah,
'Cause
I
I love
love
that
version
name.
numbers like 2.6.39.4. Like, what is. Why? Why? Stop it.
It's a little patch in notes, isn't it, in the middle of it? Well,
Oh,
I can't
yeah,
remember
yeah.
what they do, but yeah, yeah, it does get hard, especially when you're trying to find a specific kernel to work,
Hmm.
and you're like, no, you need this one point. I spent ages once dealing with an issue with that.
Hmm. What issue do you have with that?
I was trying to patch. No, I was trying to patch a set of drivers,
Uh-huh.
but it needed a certain version of the point. I think it was like point 0.3, but they
Hmm.
released 10 points for that one. But obviously, the release notes didn't say which one it needed.
Hmm.
So yeah, 3-4 hours later of going, oh, I wonder if I try this version, and then it worked.
The nice thing you have with trying to find old kernels like this, unlike trying to find old distros, is with the kernels, everything is just, you know, there in the source code. If you want to go get to the specific tag and go and compile it, you can. Trying to find old distros, like, I could find Red Hat 5.1. The distros surrounding it on either side long gone to history. No
Yeah,
one
it's
seems to have an
crazy, isn't it?
archive.
Yep, I'm saying I was looking for an old version of the Gentoo one
Mhm.
because people wanted to see about how we used to have theming on the desktop.
Mhm.
So I was like, oh, I know 2007 edition had it. Could I
Mhm.
find that? Nope. I only managed to find one on archive.org, which was from 2006, but it had the X display on it as well. And I was like,
Mhm.
how is it so hard to find it? I mean, someone needs to actually just start this up. I mean, there's got to be data hoarders out there with all this information.
Yeah, that's the hope, but you would also think that someone would have ripped the ISO at this point, dumped it online somewhere, but
You would have
sadly,
done, but
yeah.
no.
But I think there's a few distros that do have good archives. Ubuntu has a great archive.
Yeah, they
They have
definitely do.
everything going all the way back on every architecture they've ever supported. Red Hat, for some reason, around I want to say around like 2001, 2002, just were like, we don't need these old ISOs, just delete them. Which
Can
kind
they
of
not
doesn't.
keep the old Fedora calls? Haven't they still got 1 and 2 on there and all
I
that?
can't say about Fedora, but Red Hat Linux is gone.
Yeah, you're definitely right on the Red Hat one. I know they're hard to find, but I
I
thought
actually
they
don't know.
kept all the Fedoras.
Yeah, I don't know what Fedora's archive looks like, actually. Fedora, Linux,
I know
repo.
Debian's got everything on it as
That
well.
makes sense as well, yeah.
Thank God as well. They do. That can be a blessing.
Fedora, at least on the Fedora project website, has things going back to Fedora 9. Yeah, it seems like everything before that is gone.
Yeah, okay. That's how the last time I looked at Fedora. Now.
Yeah. Well, either way, like, yeah, for most people, you don't need these
No,
ridiculously old ISOs. Like, you.
no, definitely not. There's no one in their right mind needs it except for weirdos, I suppose, like us.
But I guess it's sort of the same thing like game preservation, where even though it doesn't matter really, it's probably better for that data to still be out there,
Yeah,
just
no,
on the
I
off
agree with that.
chance that some weirdo needs it.
Yeah, I'd say I'd rather it be there than not. So
Mhm.
maybe I should start it up, but I doubt I'll get time.
Go on
Like a
as
place to put ISOs.
just go through each release of Gentoo, just installing it on something, just to see how things see
Well,
how little things
I've
change over time.
actually I
Mm.
did think about doing an install starting from a 2014 base just to see
Of
how
course you
bad it
did.
would go.
Well, of course you did.
But I've still got to finish off my Gentoo from Git sources only install first before I think of that one. That was
I think the least weird thing that you've got on this channel is Gentoo on a Raspberry Pi 3. Like, that's the only normal thing you have, basically.
no, but even that's not normal because I've built my own. I think I built my own profile for that one to work, so it's a very strange setup.
Okay.
So
Mostly
yeah,
no. At least it's a normal device this time.
okay, I'll give you that one. But if it's not a challenge, it's not fun.
Sure.
Or I'm just trying to sell myself a story,
Mm.
one of the two.
I see you have this Gentoo on the PS2 Season 2. What's different about you doing it this time?
It's going to be using the new 23.0 profile,
Uh-huh.
and I'm hoping to be able to use Clang to build it, and well,
Oh.
it'll also use Muscle as well, so it'll be very low on memory
Mm-hmm.
if we get it to work. But I hit a bug on it at the moment with I think it was with Muscle. They've changed something in the long what was it, the LFS code? I can't remember exactly without finding it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of on hold at the moment. But once that's done, it should be a lot faster and a lot lighter on memory once it's done. And obviously I won't need to wait 10 hours for the HCP to install.
What does lighter on memory mean in the context of a PS2?
So the PS2's got 32 megabytes of RAM
Right.
with only, I think, 22 available for the user to use once
Mm-hmm.
booted. So every megabyte matters. So,
Yep.
you know,
Yep.
it's the time when you hear people say about bloat, this is the time when bloat matters. You know, every kilobyte that you can save is important.
Yeah, I think there is this fascination with bloat with modern systems. Like, I don't get it. Like, when you have
Oh,
16 gigs of RAM, you have 32 gigs of RAM, it really doesn't matter. Like,
I've been there myself. Like, I remember when I went from 128
mm,
megabytes to 1 gigabyte, which obviously nothing nowadays. But
mm,
and then I was still there in my thing, making sure I got the RAM down to 1% usage. And I'm just
mm,
one day I just went, "What am I doing that for? I've got more RAM than I can ever use.
mm.
I've never cared again." So, you know,
Like,
1,000 tabs open, desktop environment running. If you need it, it's there, and it's not bloat if you need the code.
yeah, exactly. Like, I get. I get liking to use these lighter systems because you like the lighter systems. Like, I run a window manager. Actually, I've actually swapped to Wayland recently. I'm running Hyperland now. But before I was running a window manager on Xorg. Like, I get it. I get that you want to run these light things, but I don't get it for the RAM aspect. And I think a lot of people also misunderstand like what bloat means. I've had so many people tell me like this project has too many lines of code, as if the lines of code is somehow an indicator of the project being like bloated. Like, do you know what the lines of code are doing? Like,
Because that sounds a bit like sudo to me. Sudo versus doas.
mhm, mhm.
I mean, if you don't need the code, then fair enough, switch to it. But
Sure.
I say I'd rather have a working program with the things I need than a broken system that uses 1% of the memory.
I actually do use doas, but that's besides the
Well, I say
point.
it was just a good example. It's the
Mhm.
most common one.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think
But
another great
yeah, that's
example is with things like GNOME. Like, GNOME runs perfectly fine on a modern system. If you're running, some of the nonsense that you run on your channel, like, I get not wanting to put GNOME on that. But if we're talking like, you have a Ryzen 5000 series CPU or something, like, it's not gonna matter. It really
no,
doesn't.
not in any chance ever at all. All it matters to is, does it make you work faster?
Yeah.
If it does, use it. If it doesn't, pick something else. That's all that
Mm-mm.
matters on a system like that.
At the end of the day, just pick whatever makes the most sense for what you're doing. If you're the kind of person who, you just don't like the look of GNOME, just don't use it then. But if you
Yeah,
like,
yeah, definitely.
but if you just want something that works, it certainly does do a good job at that. Like, it does just mostly work, and it also achieves my goal of annoying people when I use it on streams, because there's a lot of people who are just, you know, violently against GNOME existing and anyone using GNOME. So if they see, some YouTuber using GNOME, it's gonna very much bother them. And that's always fun. So I do
Yeah,
it on
I'll get you on that
purpose.
one. I've got a similar thing because I always use Nano, and the amount of comments I get from people saying, "What are you using Nano for?" And it was like, because obviously they can't say anything because of what I'm doing. So,
Mhm. Yeah.
but it always cracks me up.
Yeah, like, what are you gonna
But
say to a guy who's trying to, like, I saw you did the thing a couple months ago about getting Rust working on a Pentium 3.
yeah,
It's like, what are you gonna say about that?
it
Like,
is quite interesting. That the best time I had though was I was helping a Google dev install Gentoo on stream. Someone called me in, so I was teaching him through it. He made this. Obviously, I've helped him all the way through, and then he made this long speech about Nano. And then after he finished, I just went, "I use Nano." And trying to see someone dig out the hole. He was a great guy, by the way. Though I'm not being thingy about it, but it was just funny trying to watch someone get out of the hole afterwards. Just makes my day. So it's the troll inside me, you know. Can't get away from it.
I think I've used Nano twice, maybe. Yeah. I mean, I
used
like
it before.
Nano,
It was
but
really?
like, yeah, I don't know any. I know the keybinds are on the screen, but I don't know them. Like, you know, I don't know them off by heart. So I always am just way slower using it than anything else.
Yeah, that makes sense. I've used it since it was Pico before the rewrite for GNU. So obviously, it's the same for me with Vim and stuff like that. I know where they are. I know what some of the things are, and I can get my way around it. But I'm so much slower. What's the point switching?
My favorite thing with Vim is when there was a time when I used to do a lot of Vim videos, like talking about Vim plugins, things like that, and that was a long time ago now. But there are a lot of people that use Vim who are very particular about how you use Vim. It's like, plugins
Really?
bad. If you're not doing everything through native Vim, you're doing it wrong. It seems to be the same in Emacs as well. Like, you can do everything you need. What are you doing? Stop it. You're supposed to use it in this very particular way.
I need to find these people. That's hilarious.
I guess Nano just doesn't have that because Nano is just Nano.
It just gets on with the job. That's all, you know. That's all I'm there. All I want to do is change a config, make it work, and then get on with my job. But I don't need no frills.
Nano is the Ubuntu of text editors. I am here to get work done. I don't care about anything else. Modifications, what are those? Let's just work.
Yep, that's exactly it. I don't need it to play music to me. I don't need to do anything else. Just need to edit text.
But
that's pretty much it.
And if you're comfortable with it as well, like, there's no reason to just go and swap to something. Like, just because people say that you should be using ed, go use ed, because there are those people out there, or like go use ex. Like, if Nano's doing everything you need, and like, you're not here. Like, you're here trying to set up Gentoo. You're not here to talk about what the best text editor is. Like, it doesn't matter what that is.
Yeah, but it's exactly as that is, isn't it? Just use what works best for you. That's what the beauty of Linux is, isn't it? You're not told. No one tells you what to use. You just find that tool, and that's what you use. If I don't like it, that's fine, but you like it.
So with this this Rust on the Pentium 3, I've heard, like, this seems to be a common complaint I'll hear about people that really don't want Rust in the kernel, but like, Rust SSE2, Rust SSE2. What is the big deal with Rust and SSE2, and why are these people complaining all the time?
Right, so obviously I'm more outside, so I don't know the full technical details, but back when they decided what the i686 system was, they picked it to have SS2 because all Pentium 4s had it, and some Pentium 3s did, but nothing else does. So it basically limits about 80% of the x86 architecture from using Rust. So yeah, that's basically what the issue is. But there is a way around it, and that's what I went set out to fix. Annoyingly though, just as I fixed it, 486 support's dropped from the kernel, so they're now dropping 486 support in Rust and putting 586 in for Rust. So everyone's going to be fixed anyway soon, so it doesn't matter anymore. Which was great. Just as you get to the end to realise that, I was like, brilliant.
I always love how, like, I get wanting Linux to run on everything. Like, the idea is, you can install Linux on, your ancient system and it keeps working. But like, there is a point in how ancient it is where it doesn't make any sense to run a modern kernel anyway. So it doesn't really
you can get
matter.
Systems in about 2006, 2008 still running those kernels that still aren't supported. So I still think they're in game for being supported myself.
Mhm.
Yeah, maybe from the 80s, 90s, early 90s. I'll
Yeah.
be with you.
Like
But
when
yes.
uh i386 support was dropped, for example, like, you know, when it was dropped, those CPUs were already e-waste.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, no, I get you on that. I mean, let's say, and even i486 support dropping, is it really an issue? Not with how the kernel is now. You can pick up well, what was it? 6.1 it's still in. Is it 6.2 it drops? I can't
that
remember which version.
sounds right, yes.
Yeah, so you should still be able to use that kernel for a fair few years,
Mhm.
and if you want, backport it. But you're not putting that machine on the internet anyway.
I
So
hope not.
yeah, to be honest, that does sound quite fun.
Of course it does.
But I reckon you'll be fine for another good 10 years or so, and even then, I've got a guide on the Gentoo Wiki that'll show you how to do it if you want to carry on using it past then.
So this took you about 12 hours. So it took you 12 hours to get this all set up. Was that you trying to work stuff out, or do you already have it already planned out and it was just a matter of actually executing it?
Um, so I've spent many months working on this, getting it to compile.
Mhm.
The most fun part of it was building the Pentium 3 machine to actually build it,
Uh-huh.
because it was crashing in a VM at the time. So I thought, all the time I'm wasting, I might as well just do it on a real machine, and
Mhm.
it'll be done in the background. So I built a Gentoo system as light as possible. Managed to get it to boot in, I think, 9 MB of RAM, just
Wow.
so just stripping out everything that I don't need, but and then obviously just optimizing it as stable as I can without needing much. Um, yeah, and then just left Rust building, and then 38 days later, it finally finished.
So I know that you like every so often you will talk in the streams. How often are
Yeah.
you actually there paying attention to what's going on?
Oh well, once a day at about for 5 minutes. I mean, on my phone, I've got an SSH screen link that I could just pop in just to see it's still running.
Ah,
So I didn't
yep.
really need to watch the stream.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
every time I was at home, I'd have a look, see if anyone's messaged. I met a nice person on there. We used to chat a bit when we was there. I've forgotten his name now. I'll go and find it because it was quite nice.
Mhm.
Uh,
Cuz I was
but yeah, I
sorry.
wasn't there often. I
Mhm.
say I wasn't there often. I think it was James,
Mhm.
or James or Mitchell, one of the two. Yeah, I was speaking to them quite a lot. They basically kept me sane during it when I was there. I think I did have a few times when I've been drinking too much and might have chatted away a bit, but trip back from the pub and you're like, he was there.
Cuz it definitely made me curious, like just you know, there are some people who will do crazy things on Twitch, like sit there for like, people doing subathons for like multiple days. So I did want to know like how much you did actually sit there, because
Oh,
you would have an actual job.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. No, I've got an actual job, and if my employer's ever watching this, I spend 100 of time of my day on my job, not doing anything on Gentoo,
oh,
obviously. But I'm not there all the time. Like,
sure,
I can
yeah,
leave
yeah.
things running. If I'm there, it's because it's my hobby time,
Mhm,
not because I don't know. I do actually go out amazingly. You wouldn't believe it for the stuff I do.
mhm. Have there been any cases where you didn't realize something had broken and it just sat there for a while and you is just doing
Yes.
nothing?
Yeah, I've had that. I had one person that said something, and I was like, "Nah, still working. It's fine. Don't worry about it." Building away. Must have been going for a good hour or so before and then they said it again, and I was like, "Well, what are you saying that for? It's definitely working." Then I looked and I went, "No, no, they're right. It's broken. It's not doing anything."
Mhm,
Which it was quite embarrassing. But obviously, just apologise and move on. But
mhm.
my main issue is always a spelling mistake. I'll spend an hour fixing something, trying to solve an issue, and then I'll find out I've added an extra S somewhere
Yep,
in
yep.
a config file, and that was the reason. So it doesn't matter how good you think you are at Linux, it's always the basics that trip you up.
Yeah, yeah. I can't remember how many times I've ruined something. Like, I I haven't. I'm not a kind of person who likes to install my OS a bunch, but of the times I have installed Arch, there have been some times where, yeah, just some simple commands. So like with things that I know are very dangerous, like petitions, things like that, and you don't want to screw things up, I like triple, quadruple check everything that I'm typing. Make
You're better
sure
than
that
me
I.
then.
Sorry.
You're better than me then.
Well,
I
if I'm doing it on my actual system, I don't want to touch the drive. Like there was recently, actually, no, it wasn't recently, it was a while back. I had to swap out my Arch install without touching my home. Just be extra certain I'm not touching that home petition. I don't want to lose that. I had a backup of it, so it would have been fine. It was just I didn't want to copy the data over, so it's better to just use the correct petition. Be extra certain.
I've got a story for that one. So
Oh no.
I went away on holiday with the kids
Mhm.
and the missus, took loads of photos, got back home, left that drive in the machine, didn't check which one I was wiping,
Oh.
and found out what they call DD Disk Destroyer that day. Oh, I had I think 3 hours, 3 4 hours before she got home from work that
Mhm.
day to learn how to do data recovery.
Oh
But I
god.
will say I have now got that skill on my CV, so successfully recovered all those photos somehow,
Wow.
no
Okay.
losses. Yeah, I called it very quickly when I started writing it, so I think I only lost a few of the beginning files, but
Mhm.
whew, that
I,
was my heart was beating that day. I'm not gonna lie.
I've actually not done any. I've not actually looked into data recovery. Like, what even is the process of doing that?
So I use test disk,
Mhm.
and it just scans over the drive, and you tell it which file format you want it to find. So
Okay.
I just said look for every JPEG because it was obviously what the camera was taking, and it just scans it through, and it just dumps them out into a directory for you. If you've got a bad drive, you can use something like DD Rescue,
Mhm.
and it'll take an image of the drive, but obviously just takes it a bit slower than and retries more than the original DD,
Mhm.
and then you can do the same thing again on that image drive.
Huh.
Obviously, I can't do anything more advanced than
Sure.
get people to buy the dodgy hard drives and get the headers off and stuff like that and
Mhm.
rebuild it. But
Yeah,
going to be professional when you get to that stage.
we're not sitting here in a clean room trying to do crazy shit. But
No,
I've not even done like basic level stuff. Like if data is gone for me, data is gone. I hadn't really looked into anything else.
I'd say one day you're going to delete something that you haven't got a backup for. That's the day you learn how to do it. Before
Yeah.
then, you don't know. That's the only reason I know how to do it. It's because I went, "Oh, you idiot! Why'd you do that for?"
Mhm. The only thing that
Um,
I've lost where it was really annoying is I lost I think a week worth of videos, but I still had the I still had the notes for them, so it was just easier to re-record them. Like it was only a
to
couple
be
of
honest,
hours to
with
do it.
video, yeah, you're probably right. You're not going to recover that, are you? There's no way.
Yeah. Maybe I could have recovered some of the clips, but a full the videos that I export are like a couple of gig. I don't think there's any way that's coming back.
No, I don't think there's. Well, it depends what file format you use, then I suppose. But
Uh, what do I export at? Well, I record as MKV, but I export MP4, so probably not.
no,
Nah.
you got no chance of you. I mean, although I do feel bad for you, I've been having a go at trying to do YouTube videos. It's
Mhm.
awful, isn't it? I don't know how you do it. I really don't. It's
What
one thing
issues are
just to
you
sit
having?
there. It's just knowing how to talk, isn't it? It's easy to do it when you're on stream. If you mess up, you can just give up and start again on something else. You do it on a video, you've got to restart the whole thing again. I
Yeah.
only tried doing a small thing the other day. It took me like half an hour just to get the first minute recorded. I might need to buy one of those little note machines to have above me the screen or something.
So I've told people before how I do my notes, but it's so jank. I have a monitor arm with a dirt cheap monitor, and I just have my notes there slightly off camera. So if in my videos you see me looking slightly away, that's why. It's so much easier than getting some sort of like teleprompter because those are expensive. I can just go get like a $50 monitor attached to my arm that I already had anyway, and we're basically good to go.
Yeah, no, that's good. But you say you're better than me. I'm not organised enough to do anything like that.
To be
I
fair, I
just do it
did.
straight from the head.
To be fair, I didn't do this back when I first started. This is like a you have screwed up so many times. Actually, work out what you're doing wrong and try to do it better. Uh,
Yeah, I've not had that moment yet.
mhm.
It will come soon, I'll imagine.
Yeah, honestly, I think the issue I have with talking on video, like even with how many videos I've made, it still takes me a while sometimes to get a specific line. Like there are certain words, like proprietary, for example, where I will trip up on them more times than I would like to admit. Honestly, I should upload one video where it's a completely uncut, like raw version of how I record, because it would be absolutely awful. Like
You
there'll
should
be
do that. I'd love that video.
I think the problem that I have now, like I didn't have this issue earlier. Now I understand enough about making video where I realize how bad I am at speaking. So I will sometimes retake like a very tiny thing because I don't have the inflection exactly how I want it to be. I don't pronounce a word exactly how I want it to be. And it takes me, honestly, I feel like it takes me longer to make videos than it did when I was just making shit videos that I just, talked off my head. Just whatever happens, happens.
I would say for me, I think everyone just comes to see my videos just to see what I mispronounced this time. I mean, so everyone I miss it if I started doing it properly.
Mhm.
Although for proprietary, I just normally use closed source to get away from it.
That
Still
actually is a
can't.
good plan. I should do that.
Yeah, I still can't spell it though. Even today, I was trying to say it to someone, and I was like, I've been using 20 odd years, still can't spell proprietary, so I have to do the old text to speech on the phone to get around it or something.
That works.
It gets you out of a problem.
Oh god, yeah. What gave you the idea to start actually like trying to do videos as well?
I think like it was getting 100 subscribers, because obviously I just do it for fun. I don't do it for anything else like that.
Yeah.
And some people don't know you can do this sort of stuff. So I thought I'd better do something, and then I did the speed run, just for a laugh because it's easy to do. And then I thought I might just do a parody of the Gentoo install videos that you see a lot of. Because obviously the issue with those is they're great when they first come out, then very quickly become out of date and cause everyone that does support issues. So I thought I'd just do a parody. One day that will come out. One day.
Yeah, the same is true on the Arch side as well. Like every so often, I don't know if it happens like this on the Gentoo side, but on the Arch side, changes seem to get made occasionally that seem entirely arbitrary. They don't seem like changes that need to be done. Like, I think there was a change with maybe a package name changed or something. There was a package group changed. It changed from being like a package group to being some other thing, and like a package was moved out of the group seemingly randomly. They changed the way that Wi-Fi set up. It didn't change anything about like the quality of it. It was just like, let's change the program. I don't know if they do it for the purpose of breaking the videos, but it seems like sometimes they do it for the purpose of breaking the videos.
Yeah, but you might be right. I don't think I've ever noticed anything like that on Gentoo. The ones that we normally notice is people telling new users to use the testing branch to be Arch-like, even though it's not the Arch-like system. It's volunteering to be a tester for the new features, which is brilliant when you're trying to get someone who's brand new to Linux to learn how to do bug reporting and strace and all that fun. Please don't do that if you're a new user. Use it when you're ready. Or the other good one is random C flags that no one actually understands what they do, but they've read it on an article 20 years ago, so it must be good.
Oh, that's something you see when it's with Linux gaming as well. Like anytime you go and look at anything on ProtonDB, you'll see these giant lines of environment variables being passed into Proton, and half of them are just nonsense and don't need to be there. Like, they'll be like, I'm using an AMD card, and they've got some NVIDIA option there. Like, what are you doing? Like, and they're like, oh yeah, I just copy the same commands to every single game.
Oh, God.
Why? Stop.
It's like, if you don't know, you just do it, don't you? And you just
Mm,
hope for the best. I'm sure I've been there myself, but
mm, mm.
but yeah, I don't get it. It's just it's painful. If you ever do any support, you know it. You know the pain that I've been through helping people with these things.
Yeah, I can't say I've done support, but
Oh,
I
try
have
it. Try it.
done. I have done basically support when it comes to people with university assignments. You have people that come to you being like, "Hey, how does this thing work? How does that work?" I'm like, "Go away. Go ask someone else."
See, I'm too nice. I can't do it. I want to, but I
Mhm,
can't. I have to help them. And then, the worst though is if they come up with something and I'm really interested in it.
mhm,
Trying to think of. I've only got one as a good person, but someone came in with a new MIPS device, and
mhm.
obviously my interest is there now. I think I'm probably more keen on their project than they are themselves. But I just can't leave it alone. If
Mhm.
I see a bug, that's it. I've got to try and fix it. I don't know why. I think somewhere along the lines of giving me that. You know, you can reward yourself, can't you, with strange
Mm.
things. I think solving computer problems gets the old adrenaline going, or whatever it is. What's the what's the thing in your body when you're happy? The
Uh,
serotonin?
n- we neither of us have any idea what we're talking about.
No.
Um, I know what you're trying to say. I'm
Yeah,
blanking on it as well.
I
Uh,
can see it. It's not adrenaline. Oh, what is it?
it's definitely not adrenaline.
No, bloody hell. No, it's gone. Absolutely gone.
uh,
There'll be 1,000 comments later on with the word, though,
there
I
will
know.
be, yeah, I'm sure. Um,
Thank you very much for giving them.
but we definitely need people like you who are actually willing. Like, I'm willing to make a video that explains something, but it's sort of gotten to the point now where unless I know you personally, I don't have the time to sit there and give you personalized advice about, whatever it is that you're asking about. I'm happy to make a video on it and give everyone that information.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but like, I can't sit here for an hour being like, okay, here's how you do this and this and this. I can point you to something, and that's, or like, I maybe direct you to like some group that can help you, but I'm not the person for that. So we definitely need people who are more willing to be like, yeah, I'm gonna sit here and get more interested in your thing than you are.
Yeah. I say, well, for me, though, if I sit there on a support question, I'm going
Mhm.
to find random bugs that no one's found before.
Yeah, yeah, that makes
Uh,
sense.
and then that's going to give me that's many a time someone's come up with an issue, it's highlighted a bug, you just submit a fix. So
Mhm.
you're not fixing it for a person, you're fixing it for everyone.
That
And
makes
that's
sense.
that's what makes it interesting for me. So yeah, sometimes I'm sitting there giving up some time, but
Mhm.
for the greater good.
Mhm. Mhm. One thing you mentioned before about people using the testing branch of Gentoo, I've definitely
Yes,
seen a lot of people. You'll see a lot of. Uh, I'm
every
sure you can.
every YouTuber
I'm
does
sure you
it.
can think of names, but yeah, there are people that are like, "Hey, Debian Sid. Debian Sid's great to run on your system." Like, I'm sure it is, but like, it, can we not recommend testing branches and unstable branches to people that aren't in a position to know what they're doing when it comes to
Yeah,
testing, to know what it like just that if they want to go and use it, if you're someone who is a more advanced user who has that knowledge, who knows how to like go and debug something if something's going wrong, be my guest, go and run it. But like, can we not recommend that to new users, please? Just
definitely,
stop.
definitely. That is 100% saying that is so. Do it, and we want more testers.
Mhm.
So please come and join us.
Absolutely.
But not if it's your first day.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
No, learn
exactly.
to walk before you run.
Yep, yep, yep. Like, whenever I mention something like this, I always have the Debian Sid people coming in and be like, no, Debian Sid's really stable. Debian Sid's great. Like, I'm sure it is. But, like, if you're happy on Debian Sid, you can use it. But, like, it's just
Uh,
like the people that are recommending Arch to, like, new users. Like, you can do it. I did it. It worked out fine for me. I also have no life, and enjoy just messing around with computers. Like that's just me. But like
Why?
Ubuntu is
Isn't it?
fine.
It's like we
Ubuntu
got
Pop! OS
so
is
many
fine.
good distros. Yeah,
Yeah.
so there's so many good distros nowadays. Like I wish Mint was around when I started. Like it's just brilliant. It's probably like the most perfect
When did
desktop
Mint?
distro we'll ever see in our lifetimes in Linux. Like just let them learn and that, and then come over to what we like to do.
Honestly, I'm surprised that Mint still has like, even though it's nowhere near as popular as it was at one point, it still very frequently gets mentioned. Like everyone's like, yeah, Mint's a beginner distro, but like,
It's a great distro in general. Like if
mhm,
you just want a working computer, put Mint
mhm.
on it. I've had a laptop that I'm just like, all I want to do is browse the internet. Like I can install anything, and even I'm just like, it's just nice. My biggest concern with Mint is it doesn't break as much as I like it to. It bores me.
Linux
Like,
Mint came out in 2006.
that I thought it was a bit later than that.
Yeah, I thought it was as well, because that would
I
have.
thought when was it was around about the Gnome 2 time, wasn't it? So when Gnome 3 came out, was that 2006?
I don't know. Um,
No, neither do I now.
huh. Yeah, Mint's 2006, and so that's only 2 years after Ubuntu.
Blimey,
Huh.
I never knew that.
I, I'm, loo- I'm
You learn
looking
something
at
new
it
every
on
day.
Google, and the first like people also ask thing is Linux Mint discontinued? No. What? Why are people searching that?
It's probably because the devs were getting annoyed, weren't they, at one point and wanted to quit, and then
Ah, that makes sense.
everyone came back and it was just like, no, we love this distro, it needs to stay
Mhm,
behind. I remember reading it on Slashdot, and it was like the most saddest day I've ever heard. Like, why give up something so great?
mhm.
We need that distro.
Like I've never used Mint myself, but everything I've heard about it sounds like it's pretty solid. It's actually one exception. What during the LTT Linux challenge where Luke was using his Nvidia card and for some reason his screens just broke. Besides that, but that's
You're
Nvidia.
always going to get issues, aren't you? I mean, there's nothing's going to be bug free. If it was, then
Also, it's
Christ,
Nvidia, so like,
yeah. Well, I don't know. I've always used Nvidia. They always work for
oh,
me.
okay,
22 years of Nvidia. I usually buy
wow,
them because you don't obviously remember the ATI days. That was a dark day. There was a time in Linux where Nvidia was the only card you would ever buy.
yeah, yeah. I did
And
hear that there was a time where like Nvidia was just way better,
yeah,
but
100%. Like it once took me 6 months to get TV out working. That's how bad these drivers were.
Jesus Christ.
And not because I didn't know what I was doing, just because the documentation was so poor. You had
Mhm,
to go through 100 settings to try and find the one that made it work.
mhm. I
It was
am
it was a bad time.
I'm really new to Linux, like relatively so. Like I've been using it for like maybe 3 or 4 years, so not new compared to some people, but like still well into that period where Linux was as simple as you install it on basically any hardware and it just works. Maybe you
Yeah,
have a Wi-Fi card issue, maybe, but anything else is just good for the most part, unless you're using some weird esoteric hardware like,
yeah, yeah.
Stream Deck, things like that. But like normal computer, it's good. What was Linux like back when you first started using it?
So for a Wi-Fi card, I remember having to ring up the technical support company for where I bought it,
Mm-hmm.
staying on hold for an hour to find out what chipset it was using,
Mm-hmm.
so I could then use NDIS wrapper to load the Windows NT driver into Linux to make it work.
Uh-huh.
Um, it was a rough time. Like you had to research everything that you
Mm-hmm.
were buying. I mean, nowadays I just walk into a shop, buy a computer off the shelf. It's gonna work.
Yeah.
But what else was there? And support was also awful. Like, if you had a problem, you had to translate the Windows command into Linux, obviously, because they weren't going to help you
Yeah.
if you told them that. What else we have? Oh, printers never worked ever. Um, I had a HP printer that
Mm-hmm.
would randomly just jam up on Linux for some reason. Like never happened on Windows.
Mm-hmm.
But you printed 3 pages on that, it weren't going. But I don't think there was anything else other than that really
You
that bad.
mentioned your ISP earlier.
Oh, AOL as well. That wouldn't work on there. And then we had Win modems. What
What is
was
a
it with
Win
Win
modem?
modems? So basically, to save costs, they made the operating system handle most of the hardware stuff. So in software,
Oh.
so
Oh.
you had to buy a hardware modem to do it. So obviously, yeah, it was using a lot more memory and stuff like that, which was obviously noticeable in an old computer from 1999 kind of
Uh-huh.
era. Yeah, so you had to get very lucky with stuff like that. What was the other one I had? I'd say drop printers were the worst one. I remember Lexmark had one printer
Hmm.
driver, and you had to hack it to work on whichever model you bought, which surprisingly worked quite well, which
Hmm.
is quite weird.
Hmm.
But yeah, it was an interesting time, a lot more fun. I mean, nowadays you just pick up a CD, which kind of obviously makes you laugh, and people say how hard Linux is nowadays, and um, you know, um, I was trying to think. So yeah, everyone says Linux is really hard and stuff like that, and you're thinking, "Phew, all you do is put a CD in and away you go. You don't even need to drop into the terminal on some
Hmm.
distros anymore. I
I.
mean, that was one thing as well. So we had with Red Hat and Mandrake. Basically nowadays, you can just use a CD. It's fine.
Yeah.
Um, Back then, you had to learn how to compile your own kernel within the first week to make it work on your system.
Hmm.
And imagine doing that as a brand new user to Linux, learning how to compile a kernel. It wasn't fun. I don't
Yeah.
know why I stayed with it. All I can think of is Windows XP must have been awful.
Oh, actually, that makes sense. With why I don't know if you've ever seen the clip, but there is this ancient clip of Stallman who is saying that he never installs his distro. He just goes to a
Yeah,
Linux user group and someone does it for him.
yeah, yeah. I've seen that video clip, and I think that's why because I say, but people like Stallman and Linus aren't good with computers like we see software and stuff. They're just good programmers.
Hmm.
I mean, I don't think I've seen one of them ever mention they're good with like system admin or anything like that.
Hmm.
So, and the same, especially if you go back to the days they were doing it, it must have been even worse.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure. There's a difference with understanding the internals of a system and doing system admin because obviously Torvalds has a good understanding of how a system comes together. He wrote
Mhm.
the kernel from like because he didn't like what Minix was doing. Basically, it was like, "Hey guys, here's this thing," but
Yeah,
that's very different from understanding
yeah.
understanding how.
How to manage the system itself.
Yeah. That's what I was trying to say. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um.
I say it's also the first to admit it as well. It's why he uses what he uses.
Mm-mm. Well, he
But
was
yeah,
saying not that long ago that he's very interested in what's happening with Asahi Linux because he wants a powerful ARM-based system. And you have these, you have these like, I find it really weird that there is this anger you'll see from some people about getting Linux to run on the Apple Silicon systems. Like somehow getting it to run is a bad thing. Like
yeah.
having these systems become e-waste is good in this case for some reason. I don't understand it.
No, I don't get it either. I mean, maybe it's the thing of giving Apple money in the first place, but
My argument there is the devices are going to be on the secondhand market at some point, and
exactly that's what I would have thought. If I'd wait till someone gives me one for free, or I find one on eBay for next
mhm.
to nothing, and have a great time with it.
Yeah,
But I mean,
exactly.
it's not the first time he's switched over. I mean, he's used I think he used a PowerPC processor for quite a while, like 5 years or something. I remember him switching over. Um, I think people are more worried there that he wasn't going to do x86 patches, though, rather than
Yeah, we're just gonna kill the entire usability of this system based on PowerPC. Which how's PowerPC doing nowadays?
well, apparently this time next year, another architecture is going to overtake it. I've been listening to for a fair few years.
Mm-hmm.
I say
Oh,
started off with ARM and it RISC-V now. It's always dying, but never dies.
the issue with replacing x86 is it's it's everywhere. Like you need to
Yeah,
you, you can't really you can break into little segments of the market. Like there are certainly device classes that are not x86 like phones for example and you know but like replacing the entire desktop doing that, you either need a really good translation layer, or you need all of this software to be rewritten for an entirely new architecture, or using, something that can easily cross-compile. Which, what's the benefit there if...
When we've already got it.
Yeah, that's the
So,
issue.
the thing that worries me is that everyone wants it to change, but it's not going to be as open as we got now. It's going to be a very locked down system. I mean, just look at ARM. So trying to get that onto devices can be a pain in the ass.
Yeah, when people talk about RISC-V being open, I think people forget about the fact that you can have an open spec with a closed implementation. Like, if we actually saw good RISC-V on the desktop, it's gonna be full of extensions that are they're gonna be they're going to be just as locked down as what you're seeing with x86. Also, it's a CPU. It doesn't matter if it's open. You're not hardware hacking. That's not gonna happen.
So all you want is the open bootloader. Got that, you're fine. I mean,
exactly.
as soon as that's closed down, that's what we're going to unwittingly walk into if we're not careful or supporting off. Hopefully we don't. But
I do think it's cool to have an open architecture, and for those people who
definitely
are the hardware hackers and things like that, that's awesome. But it doesn't matter for most people. It really doesn't.
No.
I've talked about
I like playing on RISC.
Sorry?
But I like playing on RISC, but I don't see myself ever moving over to it.
I'm sure if you can work out how to do Gentoo with something, you're gonna do something, surely.
Oh well, I was fine until I realised I need to solder on some connectors because the USB serial is not working. My soldering skills aren't very good, so that's what I was doing before. Waiting for this call, was looking on eBay for a UART to try and do that. But hey, finally soon the second part of my OX64 video should be out.
So, just curious about a ballpark figure. How many times have you installed Gentoo?
Well, enough times that I know the handbook off by heart. Yeah, I'd say probably in the 50, 60 figures. But I'm setting up development machines and stuff like that.
Right.
So I've got a load of machines that are just there for different setups, so I can test a bug on something if someone comes up. I've got a virtual machine that actually emulates an i486. And then obviously I've got one for every CPU if I need it. So.
Oh my god.
So yeah, most people don't install Gentoo as many times as I do. I mean, I know people that's got one going for 20 years now. No, actually, know a few people that's got the original 20-year install going. I don't know how they do that. Yeah, that's the people that you want to be looking up to. Like keeping a system going that long and not messing up. Fair play to you.
Yeah, that's actually really cool.
Yeah.
I saw this article a while back about someone taking it was done I think 2020 or something. They took the original Arch ISO and then tried to update it all the way up to where we are now. And there have been it with a rolling release, the idea is you can keep going, until you feel like breaking it. But occasionally there have been changes. I'm sure Gentoo is the same thing, where there have been changes in how things are structured, like maybe repo changes, how maybe keys are structured, how maybe packages are structured, things like that, where if you tried to do it now, you're going to run into some issues, even though during, when it was happening, it just rolled through perfectly fine.
You can actually do it. So I've tried it on Arch from, I think I found a 2009 install somewhere that I got my daughter to install. That's quite a funny story, actually. I'll tell you later on. And I tried upgrading it, and it failed catastrophically. But what Arch and Gentoo both have is a Git system where you can take a snapshot of what the tree looked like at a certain time. So let's say you start in 2014, you can take a snapshot 6 months from that point that it was installed, do the update, then take another one 6 months later, do the update again, and just do it as if it was that system you did. There's actually a guide for it on the Gentoo Wiki. I think it's Upgrade Gentoo from ancient hardware or something. See if I can find it. Old Gentoo install, I think it's called.
If you can find it, send me a link. I want to have a look at it.
Yeah, let me just quickly. Here we go. I think this is the backup version. Yeah.
Okay.
Right, I'll pop this into Discord for
Yeah,
you.
easy.
Right, it should be this one. Yeah, so it basically just shows you. It's got different ways of doing it. It's got the easy, the hard way. But I mean, if you just take the snapshots of the, so just use the Git branches. That's the one I'm after, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
You can, yeah, you can easily do it. It's not
Plan
that hard.
A.
It just takes a while.
Plan A, just go for it. I
Yeah.
love it.
Yeah, don't do that. It normally breaks.
Yeah, I would guess so.
It's so fun. I've had people come in with a 2-year-old system on some of the support places, and it's so fun trying to fix their system, getting around it, especially if they are interested in learning with you at the same time. So you get to teach people some new things they've never done before, while fixing their system and learning a few new things yourself. That's a real challenge if you can do one of those.
Yeah, no, that's not for me. I'm just gonna keep my system rolling, and we're not gonna worry about it. I'll deal with
just keep it updated.
I'll deal with some
it.
keys being out of date sometimes. Maybe like a key is lost, they have to like delete it. Fine, but like I'm not. Yeah, no, we're not doing this one. That's
you're
for
lucky.
sure.
Come on, try it once. Come back.
Sure. Maybe if I decide to do a stream on my main channel again, I'll do something like this and just hate
When
myself.
after doing LFS, nothing's as hard as that. Well, nothing's as tedious as that, should I say? It's not hard, is it?
No, it's not hard. It's as well documented, maybe more so than Gentoo. Like LFS is just copy and paste commands, and you'll finish it.
Yeah, exactly. See, we always joke that you don't learn anything in LFS except for how to use tar properly.
And
that's
yeah,
pretty
actually,
much
that's
all
a good point. Yeah.
I mean, I've never used the tar manual ever again. I think I last did LFS in 2004, and yeah, I've known how to use tar ever since.
Yeah, there was some mistakes I made during that LFS.
Oh, yeah. The worst thing, isn't it, that you don't find out you made a mistake till you're 4 chapters further, or into the next chapter, and then you realise you make the mistake.
Yeah,
and trying to figure out how to revert the mistakes. Awful.
The best mistake is it wasn't even a LFS mistake. It was a mistake of not doing LFS. So I was doing this in a virtual machine. Please do LFS in a virtual machine. You're gonna, or on a like dedicated system that you don't care about whatever's on it. So I was doing LFS. So you know how there's that variable that's like, this is the LFS user. Make sure this variable is set to the LFS user so that every time you do a command, it inputs the correct user.
Yeah, I think so, vaguely. So it's been a fair few years since I've done it, nearly 19 years now, but I vaguely remember it.
I didn't set that user, and
No.
I got to the point where it was changing the ownership of the system over to the LFS user, and when the variable's not set, I kind of changed the ownership of my entire system to root.
Oh, nice.
So it kind of broke things.
Did you restart? Or did you fix it?
I fixed the LFS section, and I managed to work around it with the rest of the VM. So I didn't worry about it.
And that's pretty impressive, because most people just give up and restart. And I say that's the part you're learning from LFS, it's the troubleshooting. So props to you for actually figuring it out.
I never actually finished LFS. I got really bored with it. Like
it's boring as hell, isn't it? Like you hear people go on about how great it is and all the things you're gonna learn, and anyone that's done it knows that once you finished it, you think, why did I waste that time? Like, I've learned nothing.
If I wasn't doing it on stream, I would not have done it at like full stop. But where did I get up to? Let's see if I can find. Here we go. Stable. Where was I? I want to. Oh wait, is it? No, okay. I thought. I guess I must have cleaned out my cookies already because it doesn't show what I've clicked on. I think I was somewhere in. I was like right near the end actually. I think I was up to like system configuration, so just before making the system bootable.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so I think I got all the way to the desktop for
Mm.
me. I got GNOME 2 running, and then
Wow.
literally I got to there, got it all working. Had that moment of yeah, how good am I? And then went
What are we gonna
right.
do with this?
What am I doing now? If I want to make this usable, oh, I can install Portage onto this, and then at that point I'm like, I should just install Gentoo and flattened it and restarted
Yo,
again.
yo.
Like, what was the point? I always think of LFS as that Sunday car thing. You know, you get the old man driving that tunes it all up, makes it nice. But you've got a real machine somewhere else that when you want to do
Yep.
real work. But
Yeah, exactly.
although I have seen some crazy people out there, and they're very very smart people that run it as a daily driver, but
Mhm.
it's not for me.
No, it it's a bit much. It's a like I get it. It's a really cool idea, and like if you want to pay attention to what's going on, it really does teach you a lot, especially if like in the in the bits where it just gives you a big text dump of like commands to run. If you go and check what each of those commands do and what each of the options do, you can learn a lot about what's going on. But if you're just going through it, going through the motions, you're not gonna learn anything really.
Yeah,
Like,
I can kind of see that. I mean, obviously, I came from Gentoo when I did it, so I've the stuff that I would have learned from there, I've already learned from
yeah.
using Gentoo. So for me, there was no better. Maybe if you're using Ubuntu, or Fedora, you will learn something because you don't really get into troubleshooting issues
Mhm.
that you'll hit on that. But I personally think you'll have a better time with Gentoo
The other
using the
thing you learn,
troubleshooting on that.
sorry,
Yeah, no, let's carry on.
I was gonna say the other thing you learn really well is how to use some basic make commands.
Yeah, yeah, and you're patching as well. I'm pretty good at that. I can patch anything
Mm-mm.
nowadays. I can even write. Actually, I'm terrible at coding, but I
Mm.
can write a small patch.
Yep.
I learned that in Gentoo, not in LFS, but which is quite a weird thing to be able to do and not be able to code.
Mm-hmm. Do you know what I think would
But
be
yeah,
kind of hilarious if you did at some point, just as like a joke stream? Taking it
so
completely seriously, like not even acknowledging that anything's wrong, just randomly just throw Ubuntu in there. Just we're gonna do an Ubuntu install stream on like regular hardware. Just act as if this is like nothing out of the ordinary. Maybe it's like an April Fool's stream or something like that. Just
that's
for the
brilliant.
sake of it.
Oh, that is brilliant. I know most of my people are watching it. That's the only issue. So I'll have to hope they not remember this one. But that is a good idea. Maybe even go for a Windows one as well.
Oh yeah, no, just throw like just do like BSD or something. Like do OpenBSD.
Oh, I can't do BSD. I, I like the program. I like the devs, the people I speak to, but
Mm.
BSD's got this really strange issue of being just so close to Linux that it frustrates me that when there's a small little change, I'm just
Ah,
like, well, why is it not working?
yeah.
But because I keep trying to do it the Linux way. I know it's a me issue, but
Mm.
to be honest, they probably love that. So I'll probably have more issues on that than I will on anything else that I ever
Mm.
do. They seem
Yeah,
to like me failing more than
yeah.
actually succeeding.
The from what I can tell, the BSD people are a lot like the LFS people, where there are so few people that care that anybody that does, they're like, oh my god, he's actually using it. What is crazy?
I don't know, maybe because you're people see on YouTube, but
Mm.
I'll speak to the devs on people like that most of the time. They're just normal people that you'd see in any other community. I find they always
No,
help you.
obviously the devs are, but like you run into like the fanatics of any community who
Oh,
like like because there are so there Gen 2 is it's fair to like it does have its community, but it's a very small community relative to like most of the other distros out there. So I've noticed that whenever I do anything involving Gen 2, there will always be those people that really love Gen 2 who are like, he's actually talking about it. He's giving it attention to Gen 2.
Yeah, no, that's true. I say it's kind of weird for me because obviously I remember when Gentoo was as popular as Arch is nowadays, so
Mhm,
it's kind of hard for me to see that flip switch or make sense in my head.
mhm.
But yeah, that does make sense.
Yeah, Arch, I think a big part of the popularity is just the popularity it has amongst like the Linux YouTubers.
Yeah, like I say, it's a very easy distro to do. If you want something powerful and don't really want to learn too much, I'm not trying to say that horribly to any Arch user, but it's just so easy. You don't have to bother.
It is.
AUR's got you covered.
Yeah, it
Like
absolutely
when
is easy, yeah.
Yeah, I said like, I had my daughter when she was 9. I gave her her first laptop, and I said
Mhm.
you can have it if you can install Arch on it. I mean, it's not difficult to install, and obviously that was before Arch install even existed.
Yeah, yeah.
But it does make me laugh every time I read a comment about someone saying how difficult it is, and I'm sitting there going, my kid don't even know, much more than how to use TikTok on her phone. At how old she is now,
Mhm.
but back at 9, she can install Arch Linux. It's like it's not that difficult. If you want to get involved and you want to learn, it's easy.
I think the thing now is it's not that it's difficult now, it's just when everything else is so easy, your perception of what is difficult if you've not seen what it originally was is you know it's very shifted in one direction. Like when
Yeah,
the most difficult thing is installing Gentoo, it's not like your ISP doesn't work with Linux. Like the challenges that exist now are far less, so the baseline is far higher, but people are the worst problem that someone is going to have is the worst problem that someone's is the worst thing they've seen is the worst thing they've seen, basically. So if
I
they've never
that's it. I
seen how
think
bad it can be, like they don't know that it could be worse.
I think it's more we get a perception of how difficult something's going to be,
Mm-hmm.
and we give up before we've even tried because we think it's going to be something like
Right.
using Gentoo for the thing. We've all got the meme, haven't we? Like, oh, the Gentoo user will be as soon as it's finished compiling. But even as a Gentoo user, I play along with that one. But
Mm-hmm.
really, it's fast as anything. Um, yeah, it's not as quick as installing something on Arch, but it's only like 5-10 minutes waiting.
Mm-hmm.
You're not waiting there all day like we say you are. But
Mm-hmm.
people won't use it because they think, oh, actually, it takes 38 days to do Rust, like my stream showed.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes it's more. I think we've got an idea in our head and we believe that rather than actually going to try it. But like
Mm-hmm.
you said, try something in the VM, see what you think about it. Only
Exactly.
takes
Yeah.
a second to get QEM to work and have a
Yep.
little play.
The
If you
first
get
time
stuck as well.
the first time I did Arch, it was in a VM, and good thing I did that because I did make it. I think I made a petition mistake and things didn't boot. Um, that's pretty much the only. I would say when it comes to installing Arch, I think petitions petitions are probably the one thing you can actually do wrong that is going to stop your system booting. The rest of
Yeah,
it is
I
just
think that's
forgetting
right.
commands.
Yeah, I think that's it. I mean, we all forget it. Like, what was it? I did the Pentium 3, and even to this day, so I'm supposed to know what I'm doing.
Mhm.
Set the kernel up, rebooted it, and I forgot to put network drivers in it. Normally wouldn't be a bother, but it takes a day to compile the kernel on that machine, so that
Right.
was a lengthy mistake. But that's it. It's like it's usually the mistake that you forgot to do along the way, and it not reading something or
Exactly. Yeah.
misreading something.
Mhm.
But it's worse blaming yourself than someone else, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah. Um. Well, it's your system. You got to take responsibility for it. You gotta realize what mistake that you made. There's no point sitting there. Most of the time, the mistake that was done is your mistake. It wasn't like a
It is, isn't
bug
it?
with the distro. There are cases where it can be, like with where Arch install would crash from the wrong text being entered. But most of the time, if something's wrong, it's not a problem with the distro.
No, but they're great when you find the ones that are. They're my
Hmm.
favourite times, and
Yeah, those.
especially if you get the fix it.
Hmm.
That's one of the even better things, and something that they help with you in the Gentoo community
Hmm.
is if you've got an interest, they'll show you how to fix that properly and submit the patch yourself to fix it for everyone,
Oh wow.
which is really good. I've got a few changes out there that fixes things.
Hmm.
I think I've got a couple of changes in the handbook as well.
Oh wow.
Um, so yeah, if you want to get involved in stuff like that, there is definitely people out there that help take your skill level further than what you know already.
Mm-mm. No, it does definitely. From what you're saying, it does definitely seem like a very welcoming community.
Yeah, it's
But
one of the few that if you don't like it when people are being horrible to another person,
mhm.
we'd call that person out rather than obviously if you deserve it, then maybe it'll be a
Sure,
different story.
sure. There's always gonna be that.
But generally, if you're nice, we're nice too. And it's we don't care who you are, what you are. It's we're all there to learn and love Linux, isn't
Mhm,
it?
mhm. So, do, I completely blanked that. This happens sometimes. So going forward, do you have any specific plans with what you want to do Gentoo on? Are you just like sort of winging it at this point? What's going on?
Well, so I've got a few projects in the line at the moment. So I've
Mhm,
got the Risk 5 with the Ox64, which is quite fun.
mhm,
I've, what else have I got? I've got the PS2 second build to do.
mhm.
Um, and what was the other one I've got? I think that's the only two I've got at the moment. I mean,
Mhm.
most of the stuff I'd like to do is just too expensive. Like, I'd love to get an titanium system, but
Yep.
it doesn't work very well under Linux, and I can't spend $2,000 on a system to go and buy one on something that may never work. But I'd love to fix that and do that
Yep.
as a stream because it's might get dropped from Gentoo itself if no one goes out and actually does it.
Right.
But other than that, yeah, I'd just be winging it along.
Mhm.
People usually just give me video suggestions. Let's say so. It'll probably be things like carrying on the Git2 build, which is building Gentoo from Git sources only and stuff like
Mhm.
that. And just doing random things as one project stalls, to move on to the next one,
Mhm.
and then as that problem gets solved, fix the one before.
I'm
But
sure.
I did think about doing an LFS stream on the Nintendo Wii just for the meme.
I was gonna ask you if you were gonna do LFS at some point. I wasn't gonna suggest the Nintendo
I
Wii,
don't
but sure.
I don't really want to do it because it's boring. But
Right, right.
I did say if I ever got to affiliate on Twitch that I'd do it,
Mhm.
thinking I'd never get there because I'm just an idiot installing Gentoo on something. It's gonna have to happen one day. I'm gonna have to do it, but it's gonna be a lot of alcohol involved to get me through that one.
See, the problem with LFS, unlike Gentoo, is actually maybe on the Wii you'd be fine because of how long it's gonna take, but there are just so many individual packages that you need to do. You don't just have the package manager to be like, go install the base system.
Yeah,
So, you're going to be like, okay, time to do tar, time to do this, time to do that. But on the Wii, it should still take long enough between the packages where you don't need to pay that much attention.
that's probably true. And then I could probably just do one package a day.
Hmm.
Do it as a thing. So it might be better because obviously the alternative to do it in QEM
Hmm.
and just emulate a PowerPC processor and do it that way. That's quite fast.
Hmm.
That's how I do most of my Clang testing anyway. But
Yeah, the
yeah,
problem that
I might do it on the Wii again soon, just for the fun. But there's so much Gentoo stuff to do that I haven't got time to get around to it.
the problem I had with doing it on my system is I like, when it comes to the small packages, I didn't even have enough time to go and I saw that you had a couple of streams where you were just playing, what was it, Harry Potter on the
Oh yeah, yeah,
Game Boy or whatever, Game Boy Advance, what was it?
yeah. That and some other games that some
Yeah.
people suggest.
But like when you're doing it on modern hardware and you're dealing with those small packages, it's like 3 seconds to compile some of them. So you just don't even have the ability, unless you're doing like, compiling the kernel, you just don't even have the ability to go and, not go insane and do something else.
Just disable KVM. That
Mhm.
makes it go slow. You've seen disk speeds with KVM disabled. Ooh, it's a
Ah.
nightmare.
What happened?
So, as an example, I tried doing Rust when KVM was broken on a setting I was using. It took
Mhm.
3 days to compile it. Once the KVM got fixed on an update and I
Mhm.
re-enabled it, it took 20 minutes. That's the difference in the I/O speed that you can get from it.
Right. Okay.
So that can give you some time to go and play some games while you're waiting.
That's fair. But then I have to be there for another month or two.
Yeah, it's fun though, isn't it?
I don't think it is.
No, it's not. It's not. There's nothing fun about doing LFS.
Oh, sorry to the
That's
LFS
what I
people
wanted
out
to
there.
do.
I know there's
Yeah,
some of you
yeah.
out there that
Give me
love
that.
LFS, but like,
It's just not for me.
no.
That's what I'm trying to say. But I do think it'll be fun on a Wii. It'll just give it that little edge to make it exciting. Because it won't be so clear cut. There's still some issues where I don't think the Power PC guide's been updated for a few years. So I mean, I could always do the PlayStation 2 just to
You
make it
could.
even more fun.
You could. Oh my god. That's.
Could you imagine it? That'd be awesome.
Yeah, I guess it would be awesome. That's one way to put it. Yeah. Um. Sure.
It'll take
Why
longer than
not?
I'm alive for to do, but people love it. I don't understand it. Like
I don't
I
know.
left Rust running for 38 days, and there were people watching it. Like I don't know if people just like watching anything nowadays or what, but like they come.
I think
If you
there's this weird fascination in the Linux space for just seeing code compile. I don't get it. I don't think I ever will. But I guess on hardware like that, it's going so slow that anytime anything happens, it's exciting.
To be honest though, it seems to work with normies as well. I've
Mhm.
had many a date where I've accidentally left the screen on, and they come past and ask me what it is, and I'm like, how do you explain this without sounding weird? But they seem to enjoy it, so
Mhm.
it works. There's dating tips for nerds out there as well.
Just compile Gentoo on a Wii. Yeah.
Honestly, I had to try and explain cross-compiling to someone that's never used a computer outside of web browser before. I had to
Mhm.
try and explain it as a translator speaking another language to a person.
Mhm. Yeah, I can
But
see the challenge there. Yeah.
yeah, but it worked. And like, look, I think that's some of it in it. Like, we've got a passionate subject, but you've got to try and make it understandable to people that don't like what we like.
Right, right. That makes sense.
But yeah, but,
Thought you had something else to say there.
no,
No,
I
okay.
think I've just got a bad sore back then.
Oh, okay. Well, I think we've pretty much covered everything I want to cover, and we're coming up to the 2 hour mark, so I guess we can just end it there.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
let the people know where they can find you and what you have coming up soon.
Okay, so you can probably find me on YouTube. I think it's Immoloism on there, and it's also twitch.tv /Immoloism. I also hang out on the Gentoo and Discord servers. If you need any help with your systems, come and say hi if you ever need any help.
Wait.
As for things coming up,
Hmm.
just some more Gentoo on the most craziest things you can think of.
What are you working on right now?
At the moment, I've got the OX64, which is a 16 megabit RISC-V device,
Uh-huh.
and the PlayStation 2. And I think that's the two I'm working on at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And eventually
and
that
obviously
that video
yeah, and
that
sorry, and I got and the JIT2, the Git2 project, which is the Gentoo from Live eBuilds, which is basically as bleeding edge as you can get Linux to run. So it's, as the developer uploads the config, that's what
I
we're compiling.
I'm sure that one's a little bit rough. Just try.
That's actually it worked a lot better than I thought. It was I thought it'd be bad. Out of
Okay.
the whole system, only 19 packages didn't work, and I
Wow.
managed to get 4 of them fixed. So it was only whatever's left of that to get working. So, but it's quite interesting doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's then you got a real bleeding edge experience. So if you
Yeah.
like the bleeding edge software, come and join that one.
Bleeding edge for a couple of hours until someone uploads a new package, and then yeah, well,
Yeah, and then try it all over again.
exactly. Yeah. So that everything for you then?
Yeah, there is.
Cool.
Thanks for having me.
As for me, the main channel, Brody Robertson, do Linux videos there 6 days a week. Gaming channel, Brody on Games, YouTube and Twitch. And then if you're listening to the audio version of this, the video version is available on YouTube at Tech Over Tea. And the audio version you can find any podcast platform. Just search Tech Over Tea, you'll find it. There's an RSS feed. Stick it in your favorite app, and you're basically good to go. Yeah, do you have any final words for the people?
Install Gentoo every day.
Sure. See you guys later.
Thanks.